The Great Wave of Kanagawa is one of the most iconic artworks of all time. Think that Hokusai, the artist who made it, spent 30 years of his life coming up with this idea. It has influenced several notable artists including Vincent van Gogh, Claude Debussy, and Claude Monet. But what if I tell you that this is not a painting? How is it possible to create such a great art without a brush? In this episode, we will answer these and other questions. The background. Before revealing the process involved to produce this art, it's important to know some background information. The Great Wave of Kanagawa was created in late 1831 during the Edo period of Japanese history. The work is a part of the series 36 Views of Mount Fuji. The series depicts Mount Fuji from different locations and in various season and weather conditions. The immediate success of the publication led to another 10 prints being added to the series. Hokusai faced numerous challenges during the composition of the Great Wave of Kanagawa. In 1826, whilst in his 60s, he suffered financial difficulty, and in 1827, apparently suffered a serious health problem, probably a stroke. His wife died the following year, and in 1829, he had to rescue his grandson from financial problems, a situation that pushed Hokusai into poverty. The financial problems continued for several years, during which time he was working on 36 Views of Mount Fuji. Hokusai's goal for the series appears to have been depicting the contrast between the sacred Mount Fuji and secular life. Two similar works from around 30 years before the publication of the Great Wave can be considered forerunners: Kanagawa Oki Homoku no Zu and Oshokuri Hato Tsuzen no Zu, both of which depict a boat in the midst of a storm and at the base of a great wave that threatens to engulf them. Hokusai returned to the image of the Great Wave a few years later when he produced Kaijo no Fuji for the second volume of 100 Views of Fuji. This print features the same relationship between the wave and the mountain, and the same burst of foam. There are no humans or boats in the latter image, and the wave fragments coincide with the flight of birds, while the wave in the Great Wave moves in the opposite direction of the Japanese reading from right to left, emphasizing the danger posed by the enormous wave. The wave and birds in Kaijo no Fuji move in unison. The composition. The landscape is composed of three elements: a stormy sea, three boats, and a mountain. In the background is Mount Fuji and its snow-capped summit. In the Great Wave of Kanagawa, Mount Fuji is depicted in blue with white highlights, in a similar way to the wave in the foreground. The dark color surrounding the mountain appears to indicate the painting is set in the early morning, with the sun rising from the viewer's vantage point and beginning to illuminate the snowy peak. There are cumulonimbus clouds between the mountain and the viewer. Although these clouds typically indicate a storm, there is no rain on Fuji or in the main scene. The scene shows 3 oshokuri bune, fast barges that were used to transport live fish to markets in Edo Bay. Each boat has 8 rowers who are holding their oars. At the front of each boat, there are 2 more relief crew members. The sea dominates the composition, which is based on the shape of a wave that spreads out and dominates the entire scene before falling. At this point, the wave forms a perfect spiral with its center passing through the center of the design, allowing viewers to see Mount Fuji in the background. The big wave's foam curves generate other curves, which are divided into many small waves that repeat the image of the larger wave. The wave is generally described as produced by a tsunami, a giant wave, or more likely a rogue wave, but also a monstrous or ghostly wave, like a white skeleton threatening the fisherman with its claws of foam. This interpretation of the work recalls Hokusai's mastery of Japanese fantasy, which is evidenced by the ghosts in his Hokusai manga. An examination of the wave on the left side reveals many more claws that are ready to seize the fisherman behind the white foam strip. The wave's silhouette resembles that of a dragon, which the author frequently depicts even on Mount Fuji. The Great Wave of Kanagawa has 2 inscriptions. The title of the series is written in the upper left corner, within a rectangular frame, which reads 36 view of Mount Fuji, the wave of Kanagawa. The inscription to the left of the box bears the artist's signature, from the brush of Hokusai. Artwork's perspective. Depth and perspective work in the great wave of Kanagawa stand out, with a strong contrast between background and foreground. Two great masses dominate the visual space. The violence of the great wave contrasts with the serenity of the empty background, evoking the yin and yang symbol. Man, powerless, struggles between the two, which may be a reference to Buddhism, in which man-made things are ephemeral, and Shintoism, in which nature is omnipotent. Ukiyo-e. Now we can answer to the initial question: how did Hokusai produce this artwork? Hokusai was an ukiyo-e artist, a type of art that uses a unique technique, the woodblock print. Woodblock printing in Japan is similar to woodcut in Western printmaking in some regards, but differs in that it uses water-based inks as opposed to Western woodcut, which typically uses oil-based inks. The Japanese water-based inks provide a wide range of vivid color, glazed, and transparency. But how does it work? Let's see how these prints are produced by analyzing the original technique. The image is first drawn onto thin washi Japanese paper, then glued face down onto a plank of close-grained wood, using a block of smooth cherry. Oil could be used to make the lines of the image more visible. An incision is made along both sides of each line or area. Wood is then chiseled away based on the drawing outlines. The block is inked using a brush, and then a flat handheld tool called a baren is used to press the paper against the woodblock to apply the ink to the paper. In the earliest monochromatic prints and books, color was added by hand for special commissions. In 1744, there were the first successes in color printing, using multiple woodblocks, one for each color. In the ukiyo-e art, typical subjects were female beauties, kabuki actors, and landscapes. The women depicted were most often courtesans and geisha at leisure and promoted the entertainments to be found in the pleasure districts. Scenes from nature have been an important part of Asian art throughout history. Artists have closely studied the correct forms and anatomy of plants and animals to represent them in a precise and real way. The success. About 1,000 copies of the Great Wave of Kanagawa were initially printed. It is estimated approximately 8,000 copies were eventually printed. It was a success. As in the print, the wave represents a catastrophe, such as Hokusai's life, shattered by physical problems, poverty, and the death of his wife. But deep down, you can see Mount Fuji, majestic in its splendor, that remains motionless in eternity. So the artist, after years of creating art, finally became immortal, producing one of the most iconic works of all time.